we're kind of going, I'm not going to say off script because we haven't really gotten to any of our questions because we just got this. But I'm going to keep going off of that because I have another question. So from your book, from your research, from everything like that, if I wanted to begin a lifestyle journey, having never done it, having having a chronic disease or not, what would the first step be for somebody that's never done it before?
Yeah, the most powerful thing we get to do every day is eat our nutrition. So I would take a look at that. And for me, what it was, and for many people, I think it'll be the same thing. I was told, my mom was a dietitian, right? So I was raised that thinking about nutrition is good. Unfortunately, we followed the food pyramid, which is bad advice. It's to eat carbs and junk food all the time. And, but anyway, but I was told to eat lots of small meals throughout the day, and snacking was good. And so the first thing I would recommend is just stop snacking all the time. Just eat 3 meals and eat those. And if you want to be more aggressive, skip breakfast or dinner, and I do 1 meal a day. So I get benefits of a mini fast throughout the day that I think is healthy. So without changing what you eat, you can change when you eat and get some health benefits. But I would first start on nutrition because it's a choice. Every morning I wake up, I decide what I'm going to eat, but then it's not enough just to nutrition. We have to fix our sleep. We have to fix our exercise, both mental and physical, and we have to fix our stress.
Be training as many radiologists as we do. That immediately tells me 2 things. They don't understand what AI is really good at, and they probably don't understand what a specialist like a radiologist actually does. So, one of the most important things to understand about AI is to understand the concept of how it adds value. AI adds value only in one of 2 ways for any industry, but particularly health and medicine. One, it automates something. And this comes back to something that's work that's highly repetitive, low variance, not a lot of thinking needed. Those are the kind of things that AI process automation are good at. But so much of the work, let's go back to physicians, nurses, others, it's knowledge workers. And the second way it adds value, it augments the work done by humans. And so I do a whole talk track on understanding that AI, the cool thing about AI is the human brain is so amazing that we started outsourcing things previously only the human brain can do, which is what we call AI. And so that's where, things like pattern recognition and massive amounts of data. AI is better than humans at finding patterns in massive amounts of data. And so that's a benefit. But then humans are uniquely good at everything from wisdom, judgment, experience, problem solving, creativity. Think about the care process, making a diagnosis, making treatment recommendations. It involves both things. And the idea is, how do I take everything AI is good at, better than humans, and bring it in behind the knowledge workers to make them better at the things they care about, at the things they do? So that's the value prop. That's where we have the ability to do things like, a lot of studies that show many physicians spend more time doing administrivia than they do seeing patients and practicing medicine. So our ability to have AI lower those highly repetitive activities on things like documentation, the time they spend in EMRs, frees them up to do more things, to be better doctors, or do things like have more free time to do research or get home for dinner with their family. So that's the value prop. But it's interesting to me how many people who are experts can't explain the value prop, which then says it's very difficult then to take AI, bring it in behind, humans and work processes to make them better at everything from, patient care to more efficient operation of these very complex systems we call.
Talk about what you guys do in terms of how you get information from people. I know that there's a lot more to it rather than just validating facts.
Sure. I mean, a lot
to know them.
Of course, and I think Jasmine said it very well. There are a whole lot more than just data points. And so, a lot of times we hear with from their families and their caregivers, and oftentimes, especially in the United States, there's with family Bibles and things like that, the families are often a very important part of validating them. But our favorite part is going and meeting them, and going and chatting with them, and you find a lot of folks who are pretty surprised to still be around. And I guess that after all that time, that the sweet memories kind of cream rise to the top, the sweet memories rise to the top. You have a lot of folks who are willing to share a lot of very interesting things, and it's personally, it's been extremely exciting, and as a history buff, and also all of us in this, and I don't want to speak for you guys as well, but all of us in our group, we tend to have a very high proportion of people who were close to their grandparents. I was close with all my grandparents, then most of my great grandparents. And I had a great grandmother who was born in 1916, and a couple weeks ago in Japan, got my hair cut by a lady born that same year. She did a great job. I mean, just things like that end up being very fun and cool. And they, there are certain folks. It's very rare for supercentenarians to be famous earlier in life. Some of them are, but most of the time they tend to get their fame by virtue of their age mostly. And so you have folks who are going, and in a way, I think they're so much more relatable because somebody who's a celebrity their entire lives, and you're asking them, they live a lifestyle that's much different. Whereas these folks can give really, they've lived life and they live very serious things have happened to them, and they, really amazing, sources of wisdom, way beyond just about the health arena, way beyond that. And so I've been very blessed to meet a lot of them, and a lot of them that I haven't met are other members of our team have met, and that's probably our favorite thing that we do.
I would love to hear from each of you how both of your organizations can help with that and support that. Obviously, we are in the same field but have different respective careers. But I would love to hear, Jasmine, what do you think Rejuve can do in terms of democratizing longevity in Africa? And Brenda, how do you feel TAF's next goal is in doing so? Jasmine, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So platforms like Rejuve and branching into this kind of Web3 and futurism tech, we're filling in the gaps in these places. We're making via our app that we're building accessible and affordable to anyone with a mobile phone and internet connection to be able to get their personalized AI-driven health insights and be able to contribute their data and actually have access to the level of testing to fill in that body of knowledge with data from places like Africa. It's kind of revolutionary where we are right now. Like, we're at the point where we've identified the problem, but then we also now have the tools and the technology to start to resolve the problem. That's super important to us as an organization, that we do include everyone, and we are looking at solving, I guess, what they call the aging problem in a very holistic way. And it includes looking at diverse populations, and not just only for focusing on, the traditional data sets that we've always had for the past, 50 to 100 years, but actually seeing what's going on here and now, and, seeing the full picture. And as you mentioned, Brenda, learning insights, from populations that we never, were able to know before or see before. And being able to also give that back to the people contributing as well via our platform as well. You're earning rewards, tokens in exchange for your data. So it's not that we're just collecting it and doing what we want and, losing connection to the person who's actually day-to-day providing and interacting with the app. We're giving them, that value, not only of the health insights, but then also on top of that, something that they can continue to do something with economically.
Sounds very exciting.
Brenda,
Sounds
how
very
about you guys?
exciting.
What are
And
you
I
doing
think-
actively right now
I
to
think-
be able to increase longevity and education within Africa and outside of Africa?
Yeah. So I think before I even go into that, I like what Jasmine was saying, about the technology. As I said, we are a tech and science organization. And as far as technology is concerned, one of the things that we really, really try to drive is, making sure that, we develop people, we develop young futurists in Africa. We have a very young population in Africa that is interested in new innovation, that is interested in invention, that, are embracing technology as it advances. So, having technology that can help us come up with the solutions for the problems or the problems that we have would be one of the things that, Africans would be very excited to explore. And, the fact that it comes with rewards as well. People do not feel like, they are being exploited or things are being taken from them without them getting anything out of it. It's absolutely powerful. Because, I mean, as you know, data governance is one of the issues that is really, really impeding advancement in research around health, because health data is one of the really sensitive data that, when you think about sharing or when you want to convince people to share, but when people voluntarily do it without feeling like they are being invaded, that is something that is really powerful. And the fact that, and you mentioned, the fact that Africa has got a diverse gene pool. We all know that it is the cradle of humankind. So if you really, really want to see that diversity, it resides in Africa. South Africa alone has got multiple races that are here, people of different backgrounds, different colors, speaking totally different languages.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, or where you hope to see personalized medicine go, I know we kind of, like I said, we touched on how each of these companies kind of dabble in that, but I want to hear, just tell me what your thoughts are.
I mean, I think that this new kind of era of personalized medicine is actually like, there's kind of like a little brother or sister to that movement, which is actually to me around education. And like, you're talking about all the wearables you have and all these tests that we have access to. I think one thing that it's driving is people to care more about their health and people to actually educate themselves more about, like, what do I need and what does my body require? And to me, coming from the point of view as a physician, where, like, my patients are like core to everything I do, I think that element of education and people wanting to understand their health is the most powerful part, actually, because ultimately, if people don't care about the information, none of it, like, it doesn't matter, right? But actually, this longevity is making people care so much more and want to understand themselves so much more. And I've always had this kind of like theory that I really do believe we currently have a very paternalistic healthcare system where, like, people kind of rely on their physician, doctor, or whoever it is you're seeing to give you information. Whereas I think what we're seeing is a flipping of that model, actually. And more people are becoming more involved in their own health, knowing more and more about what they need. And actually, because these tests are becoming more accessible, and hopefully will actually become cheaper, and maybe even eventually we'll get to a point where they're available on insurance, then I think we're going to see some real big changes, and people are really going to start understanding their health and understanding what they need. And in some ways, maybe a bit radical, but I think you might even see people becoming their own practitioners. Like, they know what they need and they can go and advocate for themselves. And this is, for me, I think, one of the most important things that as a nation we should be driving people to really understand their health and take action where they can.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I feel as though a lot of people kind of are already now kind of driven to be their own practitioner, but at this time it's not always safe because, let's say you do have some kind of brewing huge condition and you don't know about it, and then if you do try to self-treat it, you might kind of reverse and make it worse and everything. And I'd just love to see more of that holistic care, coming into play of early intervention and being able to, reverse disease processes and empower people to take control over their health, both before anything bad happens and even while it is, that they're having the right tools and experts and resources around them, that it doesn't become the death sentence that it once was. So I guess I can.
Definitely a bit of a disclaimer that, always seek the advice of your medical practitioner when you're doing stuff. But I do think, like, knowing about your own health is becoming increasingly important, and it's becoming more and more possible. And I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, for sure.
There's the Animan Bumblebee trial, which is very interesting. It's a little bit left field, really, because you don't often see experiments of this type. perhaps with bumblebees, right? Normally we have the mouse trials and things like that, and the various things. So just in simple terms, I'll explain what this is, because it's interesting on an environmental level too. So in layman's terms, it's seeing how NMN protects bees against insecticides, right? So the idea being, if it protects bees, it may protect humans too. So the bees will be kept in a lab, provided with pollen and a sugar solution or sugar water. And only forager bees that collect the food, will be used in the experiments to ensure consistency, right? Because obviously that's imitating their natural habitat. So there's something called imidacloprid, which I think is the correct pronunciation, which is basically a insecticide or pesticide. Sorry, it'll be used at low dose, like really low dose, based on previous studies, and pure NMN dosages will be tested at 3 levels, so low, medium, high, and those dosages are based on studies in mice and humans. Obviously, we're talking about really, really small, tiny doses here for bumblebees, right? And the doses are designed to make sure the bees are not overfed and the performance is not affected. So basically, the bees will be exposed to the odor for 10 seconds, followed by a reward of a sugar solution to condition them to the odor, right? The conditioning will be repeated 6 times with breaks in between, and the bees are tested 24 hours later to see if they remember the conditioned odor. So, what does Duna-Age or pure NMN protect against acute exposure to imidacloprid? So, experiment 2 is only bees that respond to sugar solution through the experiment will be included in the analysis. So learning scores, retention rates, and things like that. And then statistical tests will be used to compare results. So survival curves will be created to compare these rates. So it's not an unhealthy environment. The bees are very well looked after, and everything is done correctly. But it's just really fascinating, because if they can kind of repel, if you like, the insecticide and the odor, and the NMN has that, it shows an incredible demonstration of what's really capable potentially inside the human body.
And so am I understanding like that they can detect that it's there and they kind of go away? Are you saying that it's doing something in their physiology to actually kind of mitigate the negative effects that it would normally have on them? Or is it intertwined in that?
Yeah. So effectively, it could mitigate the effects of the pesticides in a natural, if it was in a natural world and there was pesticides and they were roaming around, and those pesticides had a negative health impact on the bee. It's really designed to see whether the NMN could kind of either reverse or protect against those effects inside the bee.
How should I analyze my DNA to get that information? Or I might be interested in, how do I maximize my health span using nutrition protocols based on my DNA? So like precision nutrition. So just starting to have a conversation with what's possible is the first step. But then and I should say that this is obviously we leverage the product suite under the OpenAI API, but of course the answers are trained more on our internal knowledge around DNA insights, DNA report insights. So you're really getting to have a conversation with decades of world leading science. And so the goal, what we're moving toward, is to go from insight to action, right? So once I've chosen my set of reports, once under my account, the AI knows me, my DNA, my goals, you can start to then build a plan that's based on your genetic data, for example. And so one of the ways that a use case you might think about is, we were talking about Olympic athletes, right? So you might say, hey, I'm training to run or do the decathlon, right? And so given my genetic predispositions for injury, for training response, diet, nutrition, put together a 4-year training strategy for me, and then that's back into that from the macro cycle to the meso cycle. What do I want to achieve every year? And then breaking that down into months, and then ultimately the week. So you could imagine, say, hey, create for me a diet and nutrition plan for a decathlete, given my genetics and given my current training focus.
I think within the next year or two, we're going to be able to really cash out the ideas that I and others have been talking about for a long time regarding use of AI for longevity. So we're working now in RejuveAI with Jasmine and a bunch of the tech team. We're working on using LLMs and then OpenCog AI together to build an integrated knowledge base of basically all the world's longevity data. And you can use that on its own, just set AI loose on that to discover all sorts of new things about what longevity therapies might work for what people, and new longevity therapies that may work for some, and so forth. But then within the Rejuve app as well, which will soon be launched to the public. I mean, the data gathered in the app will feed into this integrated longevity knowledge base, giving sort of longitudinal data on different lifestyle practices and different therapies and what they do for different people. Then sometime next year, we should be able to launch a sort of clinical trial feature where, as we discover new therapies, whether from RejuveAI, from Rejuve Biotech, or new therapies discovered from the outside that seem promising but aren't thoroughly tested yet, right? Then we can gather together groups of RejuveAI network members, and they can try out these therapies in a structured way. We can sort of run our own decentralized clinical trials within the Rejuve community. So we can both gather data just about people's lives and bodies, which is really valuable, and we can gather more targeted data on the impact that therapies have on people, and set up test groups and control groups and so forth within the population of app users. And I think by doing these things together, like building this big integrated knowledge base and using AI, machine learning, and reasoning on it, and gathering our own data set from the Rejuve network members, I think in the next few years, we will actually be able to discover and then test some impactful longevity therapies. And the personalized medicine approach is important here. Like, some things will work for everyone. Some things only work for some people. Some things are good for some people and bad for other people, right? And traditional Western medicine has been not good at dealing with the personalized aspect, but this sort of decentralized network-based approach is very good at gathering the data you need to understand the differential impact of therapies on different people. I think that's going to be super important going forward. And then the final aspect to this, of course, is as we're working to develop AGI that can think like people and be even smarter than people, what I want to have in the AGI's mind is compassion for humans and being helpful to humans, right? And having the AGI help people not be sick and live a long time is a valuable part of that.
We are basically emergent from society, and we're like cells in a body. Your cells don't understand that they're part of a body, and your body doesn't understand, your brain doesn't understand what your individual cells are doing. So what we are part of is a culture. When we are growing when we're born, we're basically blank. The culture comes along and installs its operating system into our brains before we're 5 through our parents and through the educational system. And then the culture, we perpetuate that culture through our activities and our beliefs and our products, our art and music, and all of these things, which are aspects which actually live beyond the individual. So anything that lives beyond the individual is propagated through cultural transmission. The culture is an organism, and it's alive. and it has lifespans of centuries or millennia, if not longer. And we are not aware of the ways that a culture is, the rhythms of the culture are actually like the heart pumping in the circulatory system. There are rhythms in a culture where we are just part of that aspect too. So if we can identify those things which are accessible to us as individuals to influence at the individual level and align those vectors, we will be able to influence the culture. But we have to be targeted and specific in what are the points of culture that are amenable to modification. And a lot of the times people are just throwing themselves at the wall, basically, and and we don't really know, because we don't really see the culture as being something that is separate from us, because we're in the middle of it, like a big ocean. And so we don't, or the forest for the trees kind of thing. But really, I hope people start thinking about, we are vectors for the culture, the memes of the culture, and we are like a battleground, a psychological battleground for these different mimetics. And one of the memes is aging is desirable. Aging is desirable. Death is a good thing. This is like, how do you fight against these things which are at the fundamental fabric of literature, of classical, so they're embedded in human psychology and human cultures. So we have to be careful not to trigger them, because these things have an immune system, and the immune system, they will respond to a threat. So this is kind of like, I actually think of it like an organism. And so the culture, it's the same thing. If you want to change the medical system, you have to be very careful how you do that, because the medical system has an immune system as well. And you may or may not survive, if they think you are a foreign invader and they want to eliminate you. That's how I separate it. I don't think about people so much in the medical system. I think about the medical system as a monolithic sort of thing. It can be.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, kind of what you mentioned earlier about how the corporations not having people's interest in mind. I mean, you would think naturally that they should, because that is their
people.
customer, right?
And
you're supposed
people.
to, yeah, and that too. We have that in common for sure. But I mean, even if you just take it down to the base form of like, okay, this is the customer that you're serving, doesn't the customer's opinion and like, their well-being sort of matter in that sense? But I mean, that does get lost, I guess, when enough dollar signs come into play. So yeah, there's definitely, a big shift is needed, definitely in the system and the mechanics of the system and the reward metrics, as you kind of touched
100%.
on before, of how we, because we still need to light up those reward centers and all that kind of ancient stuff that you mentioned, but it has to be in a way that's progressively improving humanity and the culture and system, instead of ways that are just kind of recursively not going anywhere, just spinning on the wheel. Yeah, so actually the whole the concept of what you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, that's like actually one of my mottos. That kind of goes into another thing that I just kind of observed in the context of centenarians and super centenarians, people that have already lived past 100. When they kind of reflect upon how it is that they got there, a lot of times they were not trying. They weren't extreme biohackers. They weren't, intentionally even thinking much about it. They were just simply living their lives and doing what they do. And sometimes they even do things that are kind of known as unhealthy. Sometimes they say, oh yeah, I smoke a cigarette and have a whiskey every day. And they've been doing that every single day. So is there some kind of biological or scientific grounding for that aspect of just a homeostatic sort of not varying too much of anything, even if it's something that's not recommended?
Yeah, there is a phrase that says everything in moderation, including moderation. But no, it's not really that. So you're quite right. People have been studying centenarians for a long time, and they've been trying to figure out how they got that way. So as to give hints to what we might be able to do medically, or indeed in terms of lifestyle or diet or whatever, to help other people get that way. And it's been futile. It's been absolutely the most soul-destroying, frustrating field. There's basically nothing that they have in common. And, people have tried, obviously, to identify genetic things. There's one gene, ApoE, which is an exception. As is well known, there are 3 variants of ApoE in the population. One variant is particularly bad for you in terms of the age of onset of both atherosclerosis and Alzheimer's disease. But that's basically it. There are other things that have been found more recently, took a long time to be found, precisely because the contribution that they make to longevity is minuscule. So is there any hope in learning anything from centenarians? Well, maybe. The first thing is that they do have one thing that is kind of in common, which is that nothing bothers them. They have not necessarily lived particularly stress-free lives, but when they encounter a stressful situation, they just roll with it really well. Unfortunately, even there, it's a little bit difficult to know whether we are just, victims of ascertainment bias, because, we didn't interview those same people 50 years earlier. We only interviewed them when they already had the luxury of being the matriarch or the patriarch of their family and their surroundings, and generally, having plenty of time to form a high opinion of themselves. So that may, again, be self-fulfilling. But we do know that there's some genetic components, some heritability to longevity, not just across species, but within the human race, in the sense that the offspring of centenarians live a little longer.